There we go. Okay, folks, my part is short tonight. So basically, thanks for coming. Thanks for being part of this committee. I know we're going to have several meetings to update our facilities plan, and Scott Noel is going to go through that. The first part today, this is a relatively short meeting as I understand it. We're not even going to get into specifics. We'll look at all that later. So basically, thank you. Thanks for agreeing to participate, giving us some time this afternoon, and more time to come. So again, thank you, and I'll turn it over to Scott. Is that right? You next up, Scott? Turn it over to Scott, our architect.
No.
Smattering of applause.
No applause needed. Okay, so now I evidently I have two microphones, so trust me, nobody really wants to hear what I have to say. Okay, so can everybody see the screen okay? Do you need to dim the lights maybe? There we go. That way I kind of disappear into the darkness. But I'm Scott Noel. I'm with Summit Architects. Some of you may recognize me. I've done quite a bit of work in the district and glad to be back in the area. So this process, like Mr. Davis said, is an important process. It is state mandated. The Department of Education requires that the district form a local planning committee that would then work on and make plans and suggestions for all the buildings in the district to report to the School Board of Education, and that would work with the Department of Education to kind of make a master plan of what to do with the buildings, to make sure that to compare your buildings here in Muhlenberg County with what other buildings are like across the state of Kentucky. So we'll run through this. We do have a little bit of work to do, a couple of agenda items at the very end of the presentation for two lucky LPC members. So the agenda for the presentation tonight is that to go over the planning branch mission statement, the history of the district facility process, overview and questionnaire, best practices of this planning process, equity and what RS means, pricing, how that definition works into this, adequacy, step-by-step process of a district facility planning. AE was architectural engineering evaluations, which we do a lot of reporting, assessments on the buildings, and then last but not least, funding for the facility planning process and for work that that needs to be done on the school facilities. The mission of the Department of Education basically is to make sure that they work and assist. The Department of Education will assist all the school boards in the state of Kentucky, in the Commonwealth, to provide equity and adequate facilities for every student in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Facilities planning overview. This is a response to a case which was Rose versus Council for Better Education Incorporated. Basically, back in 1990, there was a court case, and it was decided that it was turned into an article in the Kentucky Constitution that the General Assembly shall, by appropriate legislation, provide for an efficient system of common schools throughout the state. And we'll touch more on Article 18 of the Kentucky Constitution. Basically, these planning overviews, there are 9 total definitions of efficient. The two that stick out and what this planning committee is really for is to strive to make sure that your schools in Kentucky, or in Muhlenberg County, shall be substantially uniform with and compared to the schools throughout the state. Common schools shall be monitored by the General Assembly to assure that they are operated with no waste, no duplication, no mismanagement, and with no political influence. District facility planning process history. Again, we mentioned the court case in 1990. Later, fast forward 2 more years, and the state, working with the Department of Education in 1992, created the district facility planning process. 1994, it was then updated, and the planning manual, we have 2 manuals that architects and engineers and school districts need to abide by whenever we design a school system, and that's our school period. And that is to make sure that all the spaces that are provided in that document, that if we're building an elementary school in Muhlenberg County, that those spaces shall match up with the same school spaces that are in Pike County or Eastern Kentucky. So the actual planning manual, 702 KAR 1001, it was developed in 1994, and which basically says that with their assistance, the local school board will have a local planning committee that will oversee and review these regulations to see how they compare to their district and work towards a plan to be utilized as you continue through the next 4-year cycle, because this planning process needs to happen in your district every 4 years, so that the opportunities are out there for each district. So from 94 to 2004, the primary role of the Department of Education was to review the process, advise districts during the district facility planning development, and conduct public hearings. Now, after 2004, they've changed it with budget cuts and everything else that have come along the way. The primary focus for Department of Education is to identify those same areas, but now they require these local school districts to hire their architect or engineer, appoint a facilitator to take care of the presentation like we're doing this evening, and to kind of help implement that policy manual. They also work and establish the outcome review with the demographics of the area, school condition, and program information are some of the major determining factors of the new buildings, renovations, or additions. In 2008, there was another change it was added to, that they recreated the steps that this district facility plan would have to go through. And basically, this is the same route that we're taking with this round of planning. We're still utilizing the same methods to produce the district facility plan. Overview, some of the questions that you all, some of you I recognize from being on the local planning committee previously, some that are new. Some of the major questions that we need to be cognizant of and be thinking about is how does the planning effort positively affect student performance? How do decisions that are made on the school affect the long-term financial picture of the district? And do plans for the school address all the problems identified, or are they simply a piecemeal solution? When complete, how will the school compare to other schools within the district, region, and the Commonwealth? And we'll touch more on these as we move forward. The goal for school facilities and best practice, The idea is that 90% of the facilities in your district will need to be in, or should be in, good to new condition. The current facility plan that accurately reflects the district needs shall be in place. You currently have a district facility plan. You've had one. I know I've worked on it every 4 years since 2006. So I know that the district has kept up with their facility plan every 4 years since then. All buildings shall be 100% accessible to the non-ambulatory handicap. All buildings shall meet technology goals for voice and video and data. No portable classroom shall be in use. And we need to provide adequate maintenance staff, one per building, and funding equal to 3 to 7% of the total general fund budget. During this planning process, we'll have Eric come up and be able to, not tonight of course, Eric, but we will have him come up and explain some of the finances of Muhlenberg County School District and see how some of these percentages compare to the general fund budget. As we move along, we'll also have a snapshot of transportation, and then we'll also have an opportunity for school principals to give some highlights on what's going on in their schools and where they really would like to be headed and what can be done to the facilities to make that happen. Continuing with the best practices, quality custodial services shall be provided. One custodian per every 20,000 square feet of building. Controlled resources, supplies at each school. Buildings and grounds shall be clean, safe, well maintained. Effective preventative maintenance program shall be well managed in a work order system. A lot of these things are already taking place. The maintenance department here in Muhlenberg County is really second to none. And then district-wide energy management system shall be in place. I know that Muhlenberg County Schools has a district-wide management system. They've also done some guaranteed energy savings projects to help lower the cost of energy and to install better infrastructure. So they're very energy conscious in the district. Equity, you're going to hear equity and adequacy a lot through this planning process. And the equity is, as definition, the application of common principles of fair dealing. This comes into the RS Mean Price Guide. You can see that the slideshow provided by Department of Education is fairly old, but what this is whenever the Department of Education looks at what the cost of, say, a new elementary school is going to cost. In 2010, they calculated that it was going to be $197 a square foot statewide. So if Muhlenberg County was going to build a brand new elementary school and say Nicholas County was going to build a brand new elementary school, Department of Education would utilize that exact same number for each of those schools. That way, that gave them a baseline of how much it was going to cost. That way, whenever they go and there's all the legislators fighting for money in the state, everybody wants their piece of the pie. So, and the best way to do that is to show that go off everybody runs off of a baseline cost, and then when the project actually happens, then the cost is what it cost when the bids come in. So, adequacy, equal to a given requirement or occasion, sufficient, suitable for the purpose. This is the main goal here is that if every school district had an auditorium, that it would be regulated the same size throughout the state. Same thing with classrooms, gymnasiums, school bus transportation buildings, maintenance buildings, kitchens and cafeterias, that they would all be looked at and calculated and designed the same if they were using 100% bonded money. And we'll get into the bonded money here in just a little bit. So elementary school model program, the other part of the manual that I talked about earlier is that whenever a district decides to build a new facility, this is an elementary school, for instance, is that there are program spaces. If it's a 300 student, 400 student, 500 or 600 student elementary school, this is the criteria that we have to use. It's basically, we're playing a big old game of Tetris, that we're allowed to have every classroom. A 300 student elementary school would have 12 standardized classrooms at the square footage of 800 square feet each. So that's what we have to work with, and the configuration can be however the design comes or however the district wants it. But the big thing with all this is by the time you calculate all of the actual program spaces that the Department of Education deems is needed for an elementary school to provide a proper education, it tells us how much the actual usable space square footage is, what the efficiency of the facility is, the total gross square footage, and what the cost would be. I'm assuming that this is also in the year 2010, because even a 600 student school in 2010 would have reached around the $10 million mark. So these are older dollar numbers, but the program square footage stays the same. And when I talked about the big game of Tetris, or working with an oversized Rubik's Cube, is that in a 300 student school, we have all of these 12 standard classrooms, a preschool classroom, resource classrooms, all the spaces that the program guide tells us, and then how we put that together really determines how the district wants to provide that education. You all have done a really good job here in the district. You have Bremen Elementary and South Elementary are two buildings that have a very similar layout of all the educational spaces. Here's a different configuration of the same 300 student program. So these buildings can be laid out in any different way, but at least we're making sure that we provide the same spaces that are regulated. Okay, the initial information and gathering analysis. This is the first part. A lot of this is done. A lot of this right here has changed. 2 years ago now, it's hard to believe it's been 2 years, but the Department of Education came up with a new process of reporting and evaluating schools, is the school facilities, and that's through the K-Fix process, which you still have to, the initial run needs to be done by an architect engineer, and then what we do is most of the time school districts in this process select a facilitator. Well, tonight that's me. They select architect and engineering firm. This is a requirement by the statute, and part of that requirement is that the architects or engineers that are hired for this process, we must make on-site visits. We must report the evaluations of each facility. We must assess them for what they're being used for versus what they were originally designed for, which that tells us what the program needs would be. And then we also offer our overall input on, based on where the district is now, a snapshot where it's at, and where the district is headed in terms of population, funding, taxes, et cetera, et cetera. So the LPC selection, you all are here, so you all were selected, or a lot of times begged to be on the committee. So you're here. There is a process. You have 4 more schools, so you have your superintendent, which is a non-voting member of the committee. You have 4 parent members. You have 4 teacher members. You have 4 building administrators, central office staff. You have 3 community leaders, 1 board member, and a local building and zoning official, for a total of 20. Anytime that we meet to have this type of work planning sessions, we need to have at least a quorum, which is 1 more than half. If we don't have 1 more than half, then we really, by law, we can't have discussions about what to do with the buildings and the schools. Like I said before, a lot of the stuff that's already been submitted to the Department of Education, it's all automated now through the asset planner that's part of the KFIX process. So whenever we go and we do evaluations and we report how the buildings are being utilized, the size of each classroom, that means we've taken old plans, we've went through, we've measured every space that we haven't designed, but we have reported that square footage and what it's being used for to the Department of Education. We've also redrawn every floor plan of every building in the district. The verification, we have sent in how you all were selected, your names and addresses, and that has been approved by the Department of Education. A waiver of the regulation must be sought from the commissioner for any member that lives out of district, and I don't know if we have 3. So 3 of the members on this committee live out of district, so the Commissioner of Education has already approved the waiver for you 3 to be on this committee. And then right now, KDE has scheduled the orientation, which that is this evening. This will come in 2 parts. The information on the gathering analysis, like I said before, a lot of it we've already taken care of in determining the facility information. They already have access to student assessment and the report cards, improvement plans, the educational programs for the district, financial information, that's the Munis system that Eric gets to use every day, that the state also can see what the finances are, and include in the district information in a narrative report. That's information that the Department of Education already receives, and then we will determine, they will gain other information from your all's planning process. I mentioned the quorum. We have to have a minimum of 3 meetings, must be advertised and held 7 days apart. We must also have public forums, a minimum of 3 that are 7 days apart. And then we will have a public hearing, which the LPC members do not have to attend. What we normally like to do whenever we facilitate this process is that we will hold a public forum, say at 5:30, and with an LPC meeting immediately following. Unless you all as a local planning committee are planning to do anything dramatic with the district plan, typically you won't have much input from the public. Last time we did this process, there was a lot of public interest. So you just really never know what's going to happen until we start making arrangements on planning for what needs to be done in the district. Draft plan development, usually after the first 2 LPC meetings, along with our information, our input, and working with you all and getting your all's comments and questions and worries and thoughts about where the district needs to go as far as the facilities, then we will present a draft plan for you all to approve. We'll help create that plan, and we'll establish the costs and everything else that goes along with whatever renovations are needed or additions are needed at each facility. And then that will go in, you all will vote on that as a draft plan. That plan will then go to the local board to let them know that you all have approved it, and then it will go on to the Department of Education. The Department of Education will then review the plan and make any comments that they see fit as it compares to funding, the program space, population, and then they will send it back to you all to review and comment. And it's a back and forth for a while unless everybody comes to an agreement on each other's comments and the direction that Muhlenberg County needs to go in. And then if it is rejected by the board before it goes on to them, then it will come back to you to revise and then have to go back through the cycle again. Public hearing process, again, you all do not have to attend the public hearing. The board will actually, once a draft facility plan is approved by the local planning committee, the local board, and they have accepted the comments from the Department of Education, then they will send out a hearing packet. And the hearing packet, we will schedule it. It will need to be 14 days. It'll need to advertise for 14 days. And then we'll hold the hearing to get public comment on. No interaction with the public at the hearing. It's just for gathering more information to report. Then what we'll do is we will put together a hearing report for the local Board of Education to let them know if there's any comment from the hearing from the public or anything else that happened on your all's comments on the approval. And then we will submit it to the local board for approval. And then once the local board approves it, it goes back to the Department of Education, and then it is, if it is accepted by the board, then it is sent on to the State Board of Education for final approval. And once the State Board approves the plan, that is your plan for the next 4 years. So anything that we see as far as roof damage or any changing in educational planning, additions that go on any buildings, transitioning of older buildings, that is the plan that the local Board of Education will operate from. And if the ideas or projects that the board wants to implement, if they are not on that plan, they can't do the project without bringing you all back to the table to review either as a finding or an amendment to the plan that was previously approved. And I kind of skipped ahead on a couple of slides there. But this is your plan for the next 4 years. If for some reason that is rejected, then it comes back to you all. The main thing that we need to make sure and that you all need to be aware of is that this is not a wish list process. This process is to look at how the district or all schools are funded, primarily Muhlenberg County school districts, how they are funded. This is the biggest portion. This is the hardest part for everybody to understand as far as public perception, because schools are funded out of 2 different pots of money. I'm assuming everybody is a taxpayer, and I'll skip ahead on this one a little bit here, but there's a portion of your property taxes that is a school tax, and that school tax, that money can only be used for facility infrastructure. It can't be used for teacher salaries. It can't be used for transportation. It can't be used for food service. That tax is on there from your property taxes, and it can only be used for bricks and mortar in the district. That was a way for the Department of Education and legislation to ensure that the money stays in the district and that there's always going to be money based off of the tax collections to provide that adequate facility for all the students in Muhlenberg County or any county in the state to receive an education. Now, some of the things on this planning that the buildings themselves, we're building and we're designing 30 and 40-year structures. So unless the building is 30 years of age, it does not qualify for a major renovation, with the exception of handicap accessibility, life safety items such as fire alarm, sprinkler, also with the exception of certain building systems that their typical lifespan is 15 to 20 years in a cycle, such as roofing, HVAC, and again, life safety and ADA. The typical roof, even though we're building and designing 30 and 40-year-old structures, the materials used for roofs, they just will not last that long. So every roof that's put on a school in the state of Kentucky, it has to receive a 20-year non-prorated warranty. That way the district doesn't have to worry about spending money on a roof if it's replaced for 20 years. HVAC systems, the lifespan of a typical HVAC system for a school is 15 to 20 years. These are a building roof and the HVAC system in a building is a lot of money whenever you go to replace them, and it's a lot of taxpayer dollars that will need to be spent that a lot of folks will never fully see. They'll feel the comfort, know that the building's dry, and sometimes those are hard projects as far as public perception to come by whenever we're trying to replace an HVAC system in West Campus, for instance, and the complete HVAC system at West Campus, if we were to replace the whole thing, it would probably run $2.5 to $3 million. So, but again, that's a 15 to 20 year system. So again, that's a lot of money to be spent, and really there's nothing, the building would still look the same. So it's kind of, for public perception, that's a hard thing to try to sell. The plan of organization, this is primarily, we'll go through what the facility plan looks like, but the plan of organization is, are you a preschool through 5th grade district? Is that what your elementary schools are? Are you a 6 through 8 middle school and 9 through 12 high school? The building evaluations, again, we've identified all this information on every building. We tell what the educational program is at each facility, the school name, the address, and the building's enrollment and capacity. These are things that we'll also be looking at because, like it or not, every student that comes to school every day has a price tag associated with it. And right now, that price tag is $200 per student per day. So the students, that's why attendance is very important, because that money that's associated with education, that's the money that does pay for salaries, transportation, regular maintenance, school textbooks, supplies, technology. That's the money that's associated with it. All this information also, whenever we submit go to present to you the orientation part 2, the Department of Education will kick back information that will tell us what the projected demographic and population is for Muhlenberg County for the next 20 to 30 years. That way, that'll give you all as a local planning committee an insight on where the district is headed and how you need to effectively plan for the next 4 to 8 years on what to do with the facilities to make sure that the cost to teach each student is as efficient as we can get it. Other items that's determined by you all, obviously the building needs, what the highest priority is. Every building's going to be different. Every building has different needs, and that is all determined by the population of each school, how much it costs to teach them, how much the maintenance cost is at that facility, what the life safety is at that facility. So all of these pieces of the puzzle kind of fit together, and our goal in this process is to bring all those pieces together to see what's best needed for that school, but ultimately what's best for the students in the district with that facility. The district facility plan format, we have a priority 1, and in priority 1, these are projects that the school believes that they can fund within the next biennium, which is within the next 2 years. These would be the projects that are in the most immediate need that would need to take place. If you have a project listed, if we list a project under priority 1 in the district facility plan, whether it's a new construction of ancillary spaces, a major renovation, upkeep on life safety and handicap accessibility, then those projects have to be completed before you can move on to a priority 2 project. Priority 2 are the projects listed that will be funded after the first buy-in, after the first 2 years. What we normally do, unless the district has a project that they are ready to fund, ready to move on it, and just need the approval of the local board and the Department of Education, we typically like to see the projects listed in priority 2, because then that gives the district flexibility that they could pick any project in any order to take care of it. So, for instance, if we have a new gymnasium addition at an elementary school to keep up with the new regulation, but we have a major renovation at an elementary school that's also associated with some technology dollars that come down from the federal level, we don't have to build that gymnasium first. We can go ahead and accept the technology dollars and work that into a renovation of a different facility. The projects that can be done regardless of schedule, these are priority 3, which are kitchens, cafeterias, administrative areas, auditoriums, and gymnasiums. Basically, these are the areas of the facility that does not have a direct impact on student learning as far as classroom learning. Yes, auditoriums nowadays and gymnasiums are classified as classrooms, but per the regulation that we're still operating by that was updated in 1995 and 94 and 95, these are the areas that are allowed. These projects are allowed to take place regardless of schedule, even if you have something in that priority 1. Another priority is 4, which this is your management support areas. These are the facilities such as your central office, your bus garages, your maintenance, central storage facilities. These are projects that you can utilize restricted funds for those taxpayers' dollars, but it's it's helpful if we make sure that we take care of the projects and the spaces that do have an impact on student learning and achievement first. Discretionary projects. These projects are regularly listed as priority 5, which do not have an impact on your district need. And a lot of these are anything to do with athletics, sports fields, archery, anything that does not have anything to do with the classroom space. And these are often moved down to a discretionary. That way the districts can do these projects at any time that they want to, as long as it's on the plan and as long as they have funding to do it. They can't use restricted taxpayer dollars as far as bonding to pay for these projects. They have to use money out of the general fund, which general fund is what's used to pay for your salaries and transportation and things of that nature. But ultimately, that's how the football stadium was constructed here at West Campus. It was constructed out of a general fund as a priority 5 project back several years ago. Priority order. I just mentioned what the priority order was from priority 1 to priority 2, 3, and 4, meaning that priority 1 has to take place before projects in priority 2. You can see that some of this data is old, that was given to us from the Department of Education. So the condition of public schools between 1998 and 2008, you can see what category 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now this is a different category than what I just mentioned as far as priority. There's a difference in priority and category. Category 5 facilities is the worst facility, the worst condition that we can have, which is deemed for immediate replacement, unfit for public occupancy. So you can see as from 98 to 2008 how these projects in category 5 have dropped tremendously, and that so the process that you all are going through right now, that it works, that we identify proper needs at each facility, we utilize the restricted funds that are allowed to us, and we're slowly but surely bringing all the facilities up in each district within that 90 percentile of being new or like new condition. Funding for school construction. Funds that are available in the schools, we've touched a little bit on it in just how the different pots of money is out there. The biggest thing is like on your SEEK funding. We talked about how each student has a price to them on their attendance on being learning or being educated in the facility each day. A lot of that is how that is worked in to the SEEK formula. Restricted funds, we talked about how that is on the tax dollars. Those funds can be used for projects that are for capital or major construction improvements and for no other purposes. And then these restricted funds, like we talked about before, part of some of the restricted funds, and Eric can talk a little bit more about how all these different things impact the district and what you currently have available whenever in a different meeting, whenever we come to that, when we talk about finance and funding. But there are student population based. That's what I just mentioned about that's why attendance is very important. Goes into your capital outlay funds. Property assessment based monies, that's what I talked about on your tax bill. If you are a growth district, the district actually qualifies for extra money as far as what's available for school construction. qualified needs-based monies. These are monies that are given by the Schools Facilities Construction Commission, or urgent needs grants. In 2008, 2010, every school district in the state was pining to have a Category 5 building, which if they could prove that they had a legitimate Category 5 building, the state was handing over $5 million checks to these districts for those buildings to be replaced. After a while, what happened was there was such a fight and such a race to get this free $5 million that the state turned around and said, okay, if we're going to give you if you're going to have a Category 5 building and we're going to give you this money, you're going to have to put a little bit of local skin in the game. So it became a match, so that all of a sudden, statewide, the applications for urgent needs money fell off drastically because a lot of districts did not want to put their local money in to get that money. So that kind of helped level the playing field out on where the legitimate Category 5 buildings were to receive that money to replace them. Student population-based funding, we briefly talked about that a little bit. Has a lot to do with your average daily attendance, and then the allocation that's provided through transportation, the cost, the special needs population in the district. Then your capital outlay funds are also included in the SEEK formula. These are calculated based on $100 multiplied by the district's average daily attendance. Now, I think it is up to 200 now, isn't it, Eric, or is it still 100? Eric may be asleep. So then local building funds, this is the 5 cent on every $100. This is based off of the property value of the taxes. And then here is your facility support program, the FSPK money, which are utilized and included in the SEEK formula for funding for the district. And then we talked about the growth districts. If you have a large influx of population into the district, then this is where that growth nickel comes into play, because this allows you all as a district to keep up with the demand of providing facilities for the extra students and the influx of population. Qualified need-based funding. This is basically, this is on your School Facilities Construction Commission. A lot of people refer to it as the SFCC, which is the KSFCC funding. And this is looked at every 2 years in the budget cycle. Whenever we derive your district facility plan, at the bottom of each plan there is a number, a magic number, and it is what is called the district need. And having a higher district need number is a good thing, because that gives your district the larger piece of the pie of everything that's out there, of the monies that are available and that can be used. So even though 4 years ago we had a high district need in Muhlenberg County, our goal is to build this plan to where we either keep that unmet need where it is or make it higher. Because as inflation hits, construction costs go up, population changes, that number should increase each time that you all do the plan. And then urgent need grants, that's the Category 5 dollars that we talked about earlier. The program is still set up the same way, that if you have a old building and you do qualify for those Category 5 dollars, you do have to utilize local bonding capacity to help go for that, like on the match program, or you have to completely exhaust all of your local bonding in order to qualify for this money as well. Okay, so this is the end of part one, thank goodness, for you all anyway. Part two will come. I was explaining to Mr. Davis earlier that once we notify the Department of Education, they will come back with orientation part two, which will be district specific. They will be able to tell us the population of the area, the trend that it's heading in, and other information from University of Louisville that we'll use and you all will use as a committee to help determine and look at each building and the population at each building and how we can help narrow down and effectively get the cost to teach each student in each building as close as we can district-wide. But there are two items that we need to take care of this evening. And I know everyone's sleepy and probably tired of hearing my monotone voice, but the regulation says that we have to elect and nominate a LPC committee chair or president and a vice chair or vice president. So I'm assuming everybody wants to be that person. So whoever wants to nominate someone or accept it, basically your chair, they're going to be listed on the committee, and that will help, chair or president will help navigate any of the conversations if they become heated. Throughout this process, the vice chair only has to do it if the chair is not here on those heated days. So otherwise, everything else will be taken care of by us as far as your facilitators, and then we can help guide everybody in the right direction. So are there any nominees for the chair or president of the LPC? Mr. Davis cannot be a chair or president because he's a non-voting member. I'm sorry, who was that? Does he accept? Does everybody vote yes? Okay, I wish. So, Brian is chair, correct? All in favor? Any opposed, I guess, except for Brian. He can't vote. Okay. And then how about a vice chair? Mr. Hardison's wondering if he can get nominated. Yeah. Okay. All in favor of Mr. Hardison? Oh, that's great. All right. So, I talked about a lot. Y'all have any questions? Especially the members that this is the first time doing this. Our goal is to also not recommend or do anything that causes an outbreak like last time. So I think a lot of folks that are here witnessed and lived through that, and that was very hard. I know it was very hard for the district to see, and to work through. So hopefully this time around it'll go a lot easier. But are there any questions or about this process? This was a lot of information that had to be presented to you all, but as far as actual committee work, the fun stuff will start. We're talking about more district specific stuff later. So, yes.